There's a retirement risk almost no one sees coming, not because it's complicated, but because it feels harmless at first. It doesn't cause panic. It doesn't show up on a chart. You won't find it on your quarterly statement, and you won't hear most retirees talk about it. But this one risk has quite undermined more retirements than market volatility, taxes, inflation, or healthcare shocks. It's a slow, silent drift that turns a well-funded retirement into a fragile one, and a confident lifestyle into one filled with questions. I call it the invisible risk, because you often don't notice it until the later stages of retirement. At that very moment when flexibility is at its lowest and expenses can swing the most, especially if healthcare or long-term care needs suddenly change. The truth is, most retirees don't talk about this risk because it doesn't feel dramatic in the moment. But by the time you feel it, it's often too late to correct. And if you're preparing for retirement or already in it, understanding this one risk may be the most important step you take to preserving your lifestyle, your independence, and your long-term financial security. Hi, I'm Jay Forgione, president of Summit Retirement Solutions. If you find the content like this helpful, feel free to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might benefit. And if you're nearing retirement and you want a personalized strategy that supports your goals and values, you can book a time with me using the link in the description below. Today, I'm gonna walk you through what this invisible retirement risk is, why it shows up even in well-planned retirements, and how to protect yourself before it's too late. First, the hidden risk, spending inconsistency. Most retirees assume that the biggest threat comes from the market or taxes, but the quieter, more dangerous risk is spending inconsistency. When spending isn't aligned with long-term income structure, this is about overspending or being irresponsible. It's about drifting. A few extra trips early on, helping adult children more often than expected, home maintenance you didn't fully budget for, healthcare costs that gradually rise, and late in life care needs that can appear out of nowhere. These don't feel significant, but over years or even decades, they quietly erode a retirement plan. Spending inconsistency is subtle. You don't feel it day by day. You feel it all at once. And the reason it's so dangerous is because it makes your retirement income unpredictable at the very time in life when predictability matters most. 2. The first decade problem and how it affects later healthcare costs. The first decade of retirement is typically the most active and the most expensive. Travel, hobbies, upgrades to your home, helping family members, buying a new vehicle, increased lifestyle choices. These years set the tone for everything that comes after. But here's the part that's often overlooked. The spending decisions that you make in your 60s directly affect your flexibility in your 80s and 90s, when healthcare and potential long-term care needs become more likely. Many retirees unknowingly front-load their lifestyle. They spend freely early and then face rising medical or care expenses later in life with fewer resources than they expected. This is where spending inconsistently compounds into a much larger risk. Your early years building memories, your later years requires protection. Balancing those two is where a real retirement plan makes all the difference. 3. Why market risk is not the real threat. Most people assume poor market returns are the biggest enemy in retirement, but markets recover. What doesn't recover is withdrawing too aggressively, spending too loosely, drawing from the wrong accounts, or failing to plan for rising care costs later in life. These issues compound in ways market performance can't fix, and there's something most people never consider. If the market drops early in retirement and spending stays the same, future care costs become harder to fund. Not because you made bad investment choices, but because withdrawals were not aligned with structured income plan. This is why having a stable, predictable portion of your income can be so important, especially later in life. Not necessarily through one specific product, but through any strategy that gives you consistent income, protection against longevity, and insulation from market timing. Some retirees use Social Security timing, pension, or guaranteed lifestyle income tools to create this stability. Others plan for later in life care costs ahead of time by using dedicated assets or insurance-based solutions. The point isn't what you use, it's that your income stream needs a stable foundation. Without it, volatility hits harder, and often the worst possible time. 4. The psychological shift that catches retirees off guard. There's also a psychological side to this risk that they rarely discuss. For 30 or 40 years, you've saved, you accumulate, you built. Then one day you stop earning a paycheck and you start drawing from your savings. That transition feels very different. Even retirees with significant assets often feel anxiety with withdrawals increase or fluctuate. And without a clear structured income plan, spending feels like guesswork. This creates hesitation. Should we book this trip? Should we help our kids with the down payment? Should we update the house? Can we afford care if we need it later? The irony is that many retirees spend less than they safely could in their 60s and then struggle more than necessary when medical or care costs appear in their 80s. A structured plan reduces that fear, and in many cases, it's the predictable income source, the base layer of retirement, that helps retirees feel secure, enough to enjoy early years without jeopardizing their later years. Number 5, the missing step in most retirement plans. A complete retirement plan includes tax planning, investment strategy, Social Security timing, healthcare planning, and estate considerations. But the missing step, and arguably the most important, is an income and spending system that accounts for late life unpredictably. Not a budget, not a spreadsheet, a system. One that stabilizes your core income, manages the tax impact of withdrawals, adapts during poor market years, and prepares for the reality that healthcare needs may increase with age. Some families set aside dedicated funds for later life care. Others use insurance-based strategies to transfer the risk. Some create predictable monthly income so that essential expenses are covered for life. The best solution depends entirely on the person, not the product. But the structure itself is non-negotiable. Number 6, why the risk shows up later, when it's hardest to fix. Here's the toughest part of retirement planning. The consequences of inconsistent spending and unstructured income don't appear early. They appear late. You start seeing the effects when healthcare costs rise and mobility changes and when long-term care becomes a realistic conversation. When RMDs reduce flexibility, when inflation accelerates costs you can't easily cut, and when one spouse needs more support than expected. At this stage of life, market risk is actually less of a threat than unexpected personal costs. And if spending wasn't structured early, retirees find themselves relying heavily on market performance to fill the gap, at an age when risk tolerance naturally declines. This is why the invisible risk becomes more visible in your 80s and 90s, when lifestyle adjustments are harder and care needs may be rising. The earlier you build stability into your plan, the more control you'll retain later. 7. The solution: a value-based income plan with a built-in protection. A resilient retirement plan aligns your lifestyle, your income sources, your healthcare strategy, your tax plan, and a realistic view of how needs change over time. A strong plan answers what level of spending is safe now and later, which accounts should fund travel via essentials, how do we prepare for care needs without sacrificing early life goals, what income sources stay stable no matter what the market does, how do we protect purchase power as we age? And how do we avoid being forced into decisions under pressure? There's no single way to do this. Some retirees add more guaranteed style income. Some shift risk later in life. Some carve out resources specifically for care needs. Some use tax strategies to keep options open. The method can vary, but the structure cannot. 8. Why personalized planning matters more now than ever. 2 retirees with the same assets can have completely different outcomes depending on their health, their family situations, their lifestyle, their spending patterns, their tax brackets, and their willingness to plan ahead for care needs. This is why personalized planning matters. A structured income system doesn't just help you enjoy today, it protects your lifestyle if tomorrow looks different than expected. It gives you confidence, clarity, and control. The biggest retirement risk isn't market volatility. It's not taxes, and it's not even rising healthcare costs on their own. It's the quiet, subtle drift of spending and income decisions made without structure, decisions that ripple into your later years, when care needs and lifestyle changes become more common. But when you build a system that supports your values, prepare for the unexpected, and stabilize your income, everything becomes more predictable and more sustainable. If you're nearing retirement and you want to make sure your financial strategy supports your goals and values, let's connect. You can book a time with me using the link in the description below.